Hi, well, welcome to Designing Your Church Website. We're going to talk about some website do's and don'ts. I'm Jayna McFarland. I'm the Web and Social Media Specialist for the Great Plains Conference. Before I worked for the Great Plains Conference, I was a church communicator. I go to Topeka First United Methodist. For a few years, I was the youth director there. Took a few years off to be a stay-at-home mom. And during the time that I was a stay-at-home mom, my dad, who is a pastor within this conference, now we grew up in the East Conference, which is now part of the Great Plains. He became the pastor of the church after I'd been there for a while. I always tell them I was here first. This is my church. I'm not the preacher's kid anymore. But there was one day I got hold of the bulletin and I went up to him and I said, "Dad, I've got the red pen," and I drew some lines on it, and I said, this needs help. This needs work. Can I help you with this? And he said, "So are you asking for a job, or are you just wanting to volunteer?" And it hadn't even occurred to me. I thought, let me come back to you with that. So in the meantime, while I was mulling that over, some staffing transitions happened. Our church administrator, who had been wearing many hats, was designing our church bulletins and all of our church publications for a while, and doing all the other things that she was doing to run our church. She had a very big job, and she was covering for our previous communicator who had left. And her husband had a heart attack very unexpectedly, and she called me and said, "Okay, I hear you want to fix our bulletins. Now's your chance. Can you come help me, please?" So I'm like, well, I better see if I'm good at this. So I did have a communications degree from Washburn University. I thought maybe I'd go into broadcasting, but my passion was always in the church. I never saw myself working outside the church, and so I just kept finding myself drawn back to the church. So when I had this chance, I accepted a part-time position at the church, and I started doing the bulletins, the newsletter, the website. As many church employees, I wore a lot of hats, and I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes. And so I am really glad to come and share with you what I have learned. So I know that some of you have been working on a church website for a while, but I know some of you maybe haven't done one before and are just looking into it. We knew we'd have people all across the board at these workshops. If you want to stop and ask questions, I'm very happy to take your questions. I know I can't cover everything in my slides. If this is a little slow for you at first, that's great too. And if you have suggestions and maybe some experience you can offer somebody else, that's very welcome as well. None of us can know everything, and this is an area that changes rapidly. So we're going to talk about some basic do's and don'ts, and I will take your questions and your comments as we go. So your church website, it's very important. This is your new front door of your church. A lot of people are going to make their first impression of your church after what you put online. Your digital front door. 80% of new visitors head to a church's website before they will ever step foot into a building. Most of your visitors will form an impression about your church from the website, and they will form a bad impression if it's poorly designed. They're not going to know that what you have going on in that building is really fabulous, or really wonderful and life-affirming. They're going to maybe get the idea that you don't really have a good grasp on what's going on in the world, and we know that's not really true. So we're going to talk about what makes a website welcoming. A website should be oriented to newcomers. Now, if you're looking into getting a church website and maybe you're facing a little resistance from the church, that might be because they're saying, "Oh, what are we going to use this for?" And a big part of that resistance is often they think it's for them. They don't understand. I mean, there will be parts of your website that will be for them. It can be very useful for all your church members. But your primary concern here is, how are you going to tell the outside world what's going on in your church and how they can become a part of it? So what you need is you're going to need worship times prominently displayed. You don't need a really complicated website. You're just looking to have the information out there that people need to come into the door. So you might have your worship times on your home screen in a prominent position, and then you might have them displayed on other parts of your site as well. But that's the first thing people need to know when they come into your church. And by the way, did everyone get a packet? I have all the slides printed out. They're on the back table over there, and you can follow along and take notes on there if you like. Oh, You know, that would have been helpful to tell you up front. There are several handouts back there. He's really good at his job. That's right. So Kathy over here had an example from her church. Where are you from, by the way? Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? You don't have to tell me because I'm not here to make anyone feel ashamed or embarrassed or what's happening.
That's okay. I was the webmaster at First Congregation
Okay.
in Topeka for about a decade.
All right.
And so I'm moving over to University United Methodist.
Okay,
in
sure.
And I'm
Yeah, I know a lot of folks over there.
Yeah.
Sure, and that is because there's just a misunderstanding about what your church website is for. I know when worship is, I know what's going on, and I can bring home the bulletin. So what is this for? So it really does help. And as you live into your new website, people will start to get the idea. They'll follow along once they understand how helpful it is. Because most of our people, they do want visitors to come, and they do want the outside world to know what's going on and to be able to share the wonderful things that are happening. They just don't necessarily understand why we need to spend our resources and our time on this thing that they personally don't need. And maybe over time there will become functions of the website that they will find helpful. You need to put your location on your website. On your homepage would be great. Other places as well. I look at a lot of church websites in our conference. Every day, you notice we post the daily devotionals onto social media. So I like to look at our churches. I love to see what they're up to. I look at their Facebook pages and their website, and I'm always just so impressed at all the different activities they have going on. It just makes me really excited about the kind of thing I do. And it kind of makes me miss the days when I was growing up in a small town church. But so many of them, when I go to their website, I can't tell where this church is. They don't put their city or their state. They may not put a street address. A lot of our towns share the same town name with someplace in another state. You don't want to assume that anybody knows when they come across your website that they know where you are or what church you are or what you're all about. So when you're designing your website, don't leave anything up to chance. Don't make any assumptions about what people know about you, including your location. It seems obvious, but it's easy to look that one over. And so that's a big mistake I see a lot, and that can really be a detriment. Put your contact info. Leave a phone number for people to call you. You can put a contact form on your website. Just make it really easy to get in touch if anyone wants to ask a question. It can be really intimidating to come to a church for the first time. So make yourself seem open and friendly and easily available. You're going to want a page that tells a person what to expect when they come to visit your church. Some of this will be shown just through pictures you put on your website, but you also want to kind of spell that out. What do people wear when they go to worship at your church? Now, at my church, we like to be a casual church. We really aspire to be a more casual church than we are. But there are people who still feel more comfortable wearing their Sunday best, their suit and tie. So I'm going to be honest about that. On the church website, I'm going to say, you will see everyone wearing anything from jeans and t-shirts to a business suit, but really, we want you to come as you are, so they know what to expect and what's expected of them. And another really important question you need to make very clear, can I bring my kids to church? They may not know. They may not know if they can bring their kids to church. And of course, that might hold somebody back. And so, of course, our children are welcome in our church. Not just in the nursery, but of course in our worship services and other parts of the life of our church as well. So we want to make that very clear. Kids are welcome here. Make sure people know that. Not everyone coming to your church is going to have kids, but that's going to be important to mention. So there are, now I can tell this is my old, we've had some technical difficulties, and so I had to re-download my presentation. I have spelled this one wrong. In your packet, I'm working from the old download here. In your packet, on page 2, I have spelled the website correctly. It says UMCPRES. It is UMCpress.com. It is spelled correctly in your packet, and it includes a phone number. These are services if you are wanting to maybe revamp your website or start a fresh one. These are services that you can subscribe to. UMC Press is provided by the Great Plains Conference. It is kind of a side gig for Christine Hargrove. Her husband is a pastor in this conference, and she grew up in this conference as well. And for a setup fee of $150 and then a low monthly fee, she will build and launch your website and then be there for technical support. Now, this is her side job, so if you need technical support, she's happy to help you, but those are evening times. So she's available in the evenings because she's got a day job. But she can be very, very helpful. So I encourage you to visit that website and give her a call if you're wanting somebody within the conference to help get you started.
What's your background?
Her background? Well, she's, I don't know her that well. I know that she's worked on websites for a long time. I know that she's very technically gifted in that way. She's made a lot of websites for churches in our conference. Aboundant.com is another one. This is a company by a former United Methodist deacon. This is somebody who really understands what needs to go on a church website. It is a little bit different than maybe a small business or a personal website. He's got a very reasonable plan and 24/7 email support. I believe in the daytime hours, business hours, they also have phone support. So we recommend them a lot. And, of course, UMCOM. This is from our denomination. If you've ever listed your church on the Find a Church at umc.com, umc.org, that's them. That's the basic level. You just put your church on their website. It's very, very basic, just worship times. Make sure you update that if it ever changes. But then if you wanted help launching your own website, which is what we really do recommend, for $5 a month, that's a pretty good deal. You get 5 email addresses. They launch a whole website. It's on a WordPress platform. You might have heard of like Wix platforms, Squarespace. WordPress is very common church website platform. So all of these are built off of WordPress. But there's other good services out there. But if you call the conference office and ask us to recommend, we're going to train you to these 3 options.
Does that include web hosting?
It depends. It might include, some churches already have like a URL and they might have hosting already taken care of and they're just wanting a new site. There will be other fees if you need to buy a URL. There will be some, and pay for hosting. But they will help you, if you have not done any of that yet, they will help you navigate that. Those are minimal fees compared to other parts of designing your website. Are there any questions about anything I've said so far or comments? Well, let's talk about content. That's the question I get the most. Well, what do I even put on this website? I know I need a website, okay, but what do I put here? Your website needs a domain name. And so I found these really good tips from Godaddy for choosing a domain name. It's got to be easy to type. You got to keep it short. Use keywords. That means if you maybe use the word church or use a word that tips off to what your website's all about. Target your area. So maybe you use your city name in your church. Avoid numbers and hyphens. Keep it clear. Be memorable. Like if you tell somebody your website, make it one that they'll remember. Research it. Make sure it's not associated with any other kind of site or business that's out there. Use an appropriate domain name extension. You probably don't want centralchurch.biz. That's going to be very confusing as to what you actually do. You want to have maybe a .org, or you can even get .church, .love. There's a lot more extensions that are available now. .org is the most common one, and it's very clear. You want to snap it up before somebody else does. Now here's another tip. If you have a URL and you want to change it, you can change it, but you want to keep the old one for the rest of your life. You want to keep paying for that subscription to the old one. I've seen churches who have let it go when they got a new domain name, and inappropriate sites have picked it up and used it for them because the letters meant something else to them. So when someone picks up an old brochure from your church and they go to the old website, they're going to find something unsavory or maybe just something unrelated. So you can keep subscribing. It's like $5 a year. It's pretty minimal, but if you're changing your domain name, you want to keep it. Now, at Topeka First, we went through a whole rebranding process. We are breaking so many rules now. And if you're going to do that, you have to work really, really hard to make sure that people know what that web address is, what it's all about, where it's going to go. Make sure people know it. And we've worked very, very hard. Now, our website used to be FUMC Topeka. Now, that's pretty good. But we thought people in our community don't know what FUMC stands for. They really don't. They don't know what UMC stands for. We're in a big enough city that maybe UMC doesn't mean a lot to people. We wanted something that talked more about who we are. And of course, it had this city name. I think anytime you can show that you're putting your name, the name of your city first, that's part of your identity, you're there to serve that community, that's a really great idea. But we dropped all that. We had been working really hard on changing our mission to for the good of the city. That's inspired by Jeremiah 29:7, where it says, do all you can for the city in which I've placed you. Paraphrase. But anyway, we had done a lot of work on changing our vision of the church to for the good of the city. That meant we had redirected all of our mission focus to the missions that were closest to the urban core of our city. That helped us to streamline a lot of that because we have a lot of mission organizations in town that needed support, and we could do like one small thing here and one small thing there. But once we narrowed it down to the few near our urban core, who we felt were doing the most for the good of the city, that helped us to put the most effort and make the most impact on those few things. So we got really involved in our downtown. The revitalization of downtown Topeka is really big right now. It needs a lot of support, and it's really taken off, and our church has been a part of that from the beginning. So that was also for the good of the city. So when we launched a new logo and website and branding, we changed our domain to forthegoodofthecity.org. All of the email addresses are at forthegoodofthecity.org, but we worked very hard to have that. Everywhere you see the name of our church, you see forthegoodofthecity.org. But if you're not prepared to put all that work into it, keep it simple. Nothing wrong with keeping it simple. Now, websites these days, most people are going to, websites, you got about half people looking at on their mobile device and about the other half who are checking it out on the desktop. I would also include tablets, maybe in a more mobile device. When you are designing your website, you want to make sure it is responsive no matter what device you're viewing it from. So if you are setting up your page in WordPress and a lot of other platforms, they'll give you the opportunity to preview it as a desktop page and a mobile page, which will probably be more vertical. You want to make sure it makes sense either way. Check it out. Make sure it does. If you've got an older website, it may not be responsive, and it might be time to give it a fresh look so that it works. If it pops up on your phone and the type is really, really small, the pictures are really small, you can't navigate it very easily because the menus don't work properly. That's going to be a hindrance to people getting through your website and finding out how to come visit your church. So when they get to your church, what do they need to find? Now, I've built a sample website just to give you some ideas of how it might be laid out. I might take a break in a minute and get out of the slides and show that to you. You're going to want a prominent menu. Sometimes we're not sure. It really is confusing. What do I need to put on this website to show people? How do I organize this information? So Todd and I got together and we decided on a few menu items that are very short and clear and help you can pretty much organize any information that you want to put on there into one of these categories. If you have a better idea for your specific church, go for it. At Topeka First for a while, our words were connect, grow, serve, and everything went into a connect, grow, or serve menu. This actually might be more clear than that. So when people come to your website, your home, your default page, your welcome page, that's your home page, that's going to be on there automatically. But you want it to be very easy to find out what it's like if you're new. How do I? So just add a tab. I'm new. And when that drops down, this is a screenshot from my website that I've just designed as a sample. There's your welcome, your home page. And this, if you click here, this is the menu that pops down. So if it's I'm new, you want a little bit about your church, you can put a paragraph or two about the history of your church if that's important to you. You can put a page for your staff. So when people come to your church, they might feel like they've already met somebody, or at least there's a familiar face. Have some short staff bios, you know. In a staff bio, you might say, this is Pastor Sandy. She's been here for a couple years. Before that, she served here. This is her background. And when she's not at church, she just loves to garden, or she loves serving at the local elementary school. So some information about what they do at your church, maybe a little bit of background, and something that's really relational about them is really helpful.
How do you feel about the phishing schemes that are going on using the pastor's image and the email address?
That's
Do you
true.
really want to put that on? And secondly, do you want to respect the privacy of your staff who may not want their photo on the World Wide Web?
Well, that's a good question. And on the website, we wouldn't necessarily put their email address. There's a couple ways you can get around that. At Topeka, we put, and so you'll see this in other websites, they'll put, if you want to send our staff an email, we spell it out, put first initial, last name, at, and then for the good of this, like we would put like a plus sign in between so you know how to write it out. So that way you don't have this email address that's easily grabbed by a bot. You don't have to put pictures if you don't want to. I don't think that's going to keep anyone from trying to rip off your pastor's identity, honestly. Their pictures are out there. So you can protect your email just a little bit, but it's not going to stop that. Yeah?
For our staff, we have one email address that
You
everybody
could.
uses. That goes through me, and then I just send it out to
Sure,
everybody.
sure. And you can control the security of that. Yeah. That's another way to handle that. There are a couple things you can do. I mean, unfortunately, in this day we live in, things are going to happen. But of course, you know, if someone does not want their picture on their website, I wouldn't make them do that. But I think it is helpful. If there's someone who's going to be interacting with your kids, it's kind of helpful to see who that is. Of course, a pastor is almost like a public figure, too. Mm-hmm.
That kind of brings up, and this may be different, but we're kind of dealing with this right now because you use pictures of church happenings, then posting that media disclaimer or something in the church. You get our kids that'll sign that stuff because
Sure.
not only the staff pictures, but just if you're trying to promote your church, which I'm sure we'll
Absolutely.
do later, gotta figure out how to.
One
do
of
that.
the handouts is an example of a photograph interview video release form. You can download this on the Great Plains website, or you can copy this, or you can use it as a model to design your own. But we do recommend, at our church, every child who signs up for an event, and even at our after-school program and at all of our activities we do, everyone has one of these on file. I think maybe even in certain situations we ask adults to sign them as well. And there are sometimes parents who don't want their kids' image out there, and we just let it known. Any volunteer taking pictures, and we watch for that too. If we see them in a picture, we just don't post that picture because we do want to respect people's privacy in that way. We haven't found a. This is the photograph release form, or it might be called the media release form. Yeah, did that get passed out? Yeah, let's go ahead and pass that out. Anything else that hasn't been passed out, those are all things that need to be are part of our presentation today. Yeah.
Be a separate form. I don't know, like our VBS registration form has on there more of an opt-out. It's like, by registering, you show me photographs unless you initial here type
Sure.
thing. Do you feel like that is sufficient, or it needs to be actually signing a registry?
That's a good question. I think for the case of VBS, that might work just fine, especially if you're having visitors who are there just for that one event. It is also helpful to have the kids who are there all the time, just to have one on file. But I think that is another way to handle it. Have a checkbox on your registration form for an event. A parent signature. Make sure they understand what they're signing. And if you're live streaming, one thing Todd recommends, I think this is a great idea, is to have a sign that says this will be live streamed, and then have a spot in your sanctuary maybe where the camera doesn't show. You know, that might be the certain blind spot of the camera, and you can say, if you do not wish to appear on a live stream, feel free to sit here, and we'll make sure you're not in there. But for maybe events where people are milling around, it might be helpful to have a sign that says, hey, we're taking pictures for our Facebook page or our website. Please let us know if you wish to not, or at least so they're aware that there's pictures taken. Most of the time these days, people understand that pictures might be posted online, but give them the opportunity to tell you if they would know.
Like posting a sign and just saying questions, contact the, like
Yeah,
instead of
yeah.
saying if you don't want to, like
Sure,
that
sure.
negative out.
I agree,
You know,
yeah.
just contact the church, because if somebody has a problem with it, they're probably going to contact.
Sure.
But we don't want to like put it out there.
Questions about our media use,
Exactly.
contact this number, this email address. I like that a lot better. Definitely steer away from the negative. Don't put that thought into their mind. A lot of times they won't mind until you tell them they can. Does everyone have a release form? We can provide a link to download it yourself if you'd like. A lot of it, the time, is just showing people that you do care about their privacy. You do give them the option to participate or not. Sometimes it's just reassuring to know that the church is paying attention to that. So other things that you might want to include on your website. So you've got I'm new. This is the introductory information. Get involved would be the next tab I would put. These are where you put your ministries, youth, children, adults, groups that you maybe can be a part of if you get involved at the church. What missions are you doing for your community? How are you plugged in outside of your building? This would be a good place to put that. You know, missions are a good entry point for people these days. People really do care about what's going on in the world around them and in their communities. They want to help out. And maybe they realize that church is a way that they can get their foot in the door with a volunteer project. So invite them to be a part of that. You want an events and calendar page. Now, I recommend having a special events page because we are all, like I've said many times now, wearing many hats. We're all busy. Many of us are very part-time. A lot of people running our websites are just volunteers, and it is hard to keep things up to date. So when I'm talking about these different pages, I would recommend putting some very general information. Worship times probably aren't going to change for a while. If they do, they just changed at my church. You want to work really hard to make people know that that's what's going on. But for the most part, that's pretty steady. Sunday school times on the children's page, those are probably going to stay pretty consistent, at least during the school year. So you can say, come to Sunday school, 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings. Our children's ministry meets during the week between August and May. Please check our newsletter or our special events page to find out what new things are happening next. And so that's the page that you want to make sure you check at least once a month, if not every week. Make sure you don't have old information up there, and anything new that's coming up is on that page. So you know this is the page. If I don't have time for anything else, I'm going to make sure this page is up to date. The rest of it I will make sure I check regularly, but that one is going to be the one I'm going to make sure does not have old stuff on it. I'm going to change it regularly. Anything new that's coming up is going to be put there, and that'll help you to really streamline your information and save you some time. And if you have a newsletter, post it on your website. People like to see what you've been up to. If they're checking you out, they might want to see what kind of things have they done before, what kind of things are coming up. Maybe there's something I want to bring my kids to later. And you can put your website, your newsletter on your website. You might use Constant Contact or MailChimp or some kind of online service to send out an email newsletter. And so in that way, you can just have links up there to that. If you have a printed newsletter, you can add PDFs to your website. So whatever people would see in print, you can upload it to the media library on your website, and that just shows up as a link, and people can download it. But I definitely think it's helpful to have a newsletter on there. But in the life of the church, we don't want people just to stay up here as visitors and just kind of going along and doing the fun stuff. We do have an expectation that eventually they will be drawn into a life with Christ. And what does that look like at your church? On my example, I put just a very brief page saying, hey, these are some things that you might do when you're ready to take the next step. Maybe you become a member. Maybe you volunteer to teach a Sunday school class. Maybe you commit to tithing. Those are some things you might mention on a Go Deeper page. We'll get into the website and poke around on it in a little bit. But you do want to show that we do make a difference in your life. You will come and your life will be changed, and then you'll be able to take another step. And then for your members, you'd want to have a giving tab on your website. Show them how they can sign up to maybe give online. You might make this available to have people pay for their activities, maybe their Bible study online, but it's very convenient for your members to find a place to give. Now, you might want to mention, hey, if you're just visiting us, our worship services are a gift to you, but if you're ready to support us with your financial gifts, here's how you do it. Now, anything on the web is going to be very visually driven. We kind of know that, right? So you want to have quality photos on your website that really show what it's like to be a member of your church. And this can be kind of intimidating. We don't all have a photography background. We may not have a nice camera. But there's probably somebody in your church who has a camera who likes to take pictures. You might have a smartphone. Most of the pictures I've taken for my church, even a lot I use for the conference, I just snap with my phone. If you do that, you often have the choice to download as a small, medium, large, or actual size file. Always do the actual size or the very biggest file you can download. That's going to be your best quality. You can always scale it down, but you can't scale it back up. That's my caveat there. But find a volunteer. Find someone who enjoys taking pictures and enlist their help. It is helpful to have pictures of your worship space, but empty rooms, buildings, don't play very well. Todd was just telling me about a study he read that newspapers have been doing. That people's eyes just, even in the printed form, they do not rest on a building. Their eyes will skip over it. So this picture of my church I'm using as a background here, I did just snap that with my iPhone. I might put that in a corner of the website just so people know, hey, this is the right place that you've gotten to. But that's not going to be my main picture. I might have kids outside having a water balloon fight, or our whole church out there having a picnic. I'm going to have people in the moment. If I'm taking pictures of our sanctuary for our website, I'm going to take them to show people who are worshiping. I'm going to have kids at children's time if you have it. I'm going to have people sharing a hymnal in that picture. So you see what the sanctuary is like and see what that worship space is like. You also see what people are wearing, the kind of demeanor they have when they're in there. It's much more appealing than just having an empty building. We're proud of our buildings. We all have lovely church buildings that we take care of and we are proud of. But an empty but the buildings mean a lot more to us as members than they do to the outside world. Now you wanted to get very specific. Now an idea to take all these pictures, it's okay to stage them. You want to make sure you get the right shots. So I am totally behind if you want to stage these moments. You might tell your church on this day, we're going to take some pictures for the website. We're going to do a couple special things during worship, or sing your favorite song, or the choir's going to do their favorite anthem that gets everyone excited. We're going to have a picnic after church, and we're going to take pictures of that. We're going to have a softball game. And so anyway, make it a church event. Say, hey, we're going to take pictures this day, let people know. And then get very specific when you tell your volunteers, this is the kind of picture I want. I want a picture of kids raising their hand excited during the children's time. I want a picture of someone holding balloons out in front of the, I want a picture of people serving a meal, maybe not eating a meal. We don't want to get real awkward and uncomfortable. But just get very specific, because sometimes our volunteers are really happy to help, but they don't know. They don't necessarily know what we're looking for. We might have an idea in our mind of what we want on the website, but it might not be clear to them what that needs to be. So you might get very specific and tell them what you'd like, and ask for their opinions as well. Pictures need to be pretty large size. There's some numbers here that tell you about how big that needs to be for most screens. Most things are going to be in widescreen these days. If you want to share pictures, you can use a Google or Flickr photo gallery. Those are available for free. I think maybe Flickr, if you go up, there are some pricing levels if you want to go with that direction with it. But these are good ways for your volunteers to get together and share their pictures. You can display these photo galleries on your website. You will have a pool of pictures to use next year when you do this event again. You can pull those pictures out and say, remember how fun that was, and use it to promote it the next time. And you can give multiple people access to those so they can load them. It's very easy. But not everyone has to have access to the pictures. They can view them, but not necessarily download them. Some churches start a photography ministry. I heard this idea at Church of the Resurrection, but I've also heard of very small churches doing this. There are some people who are just good photography hobbyists. They like to get together and talk about the new tips and tools of the trade. They like to talk about projects they've done. So in some churches, they meet once a month, and they might do a devotion, and they talk about photography and their interests. They show each other the pictures they've taken, and then they look at the church calendar because they see this as a ministry. This is their opportunity to use their gifts and their interests to really serve. And they look at the calendar and they say, okay, I'll take this event if you'll take this one, and they talk about what they might need to take on those days. So that makes sure everything's covered. As the youth director, I was behind the camera a lot, and I was trying to run events, and I was also taking the pictures. Of course, I didn't make it into any of them, which I didn't care that much about. But it's a lot to juggle. So having someone else on hand who's available to take the pictures, so if you're running an event somewhere, you don't have to worry about that. You can just trust them. That makes a big difference. It takes a lot of weight off. Are there any questions or comments up to this point? This might be a good time to take a break if we need one. We're about an hour in. Anyone need a break, or should we keep going? Keep going.
I have a comment.
Yes.
Really in this direction related to
Oh, sure.
I did get reminded of it. And that's to keep in mind that if you have a website in the past that's still out there.
Yes.
I had a situation several years ago now that my daughter was actually preaching at a small church within the conference, and I couldn't remember what time they said worship was. I looked up online times through Google, but I knew that the pastor that was listed on the website was not the current pastor. So there flags up for me. I don't know if the worship times are right. So I called the church office to verify what time she was supposed to be there to preach, and it turns out that worship times were wrong on it. The church secretary told me we don't have a website. And I said, well, there's a website. Because I said something like, you might want to update your website because it's got the wrong worship times and the wrong pastor. Well, we don't have a website. Well, you do have a website because it's still out there. No, we don't have, we used to, but we don't have a website anymore. Well, as a visitor, I don't know that that's not your website.
Sure, absolutely. And you bring up a very good point. There needs to be more than one person with administrative access to your website. One of those people can be the pastor, but that should not be the only person, and it shouldn't be the pastor and the pastor's spouse. Because a lot of times that happens because they've gotten locked out of their website. Somebody who had the password has moved on and done something else, and that information just didn't get passed along. Yes?
I have a question, kind of the same way.
Okay.
I've been taking care of our website, when I made the website. And a congregation member came to me one day, said, did you know you've got two websites up there? And I said, no, I didn't. And I said, I'd look into it. Well, I found, yes, there was 2 websites, mine and another one with the same church name. And like her, there was no minister on it, no time, no nothing.
Hmm.
And I have not been able to find out anything, basically who put it up there, or where it came from.
And how do you get it down?
My question is,
Yes.
how do I get it off? I have
Somebody's paying the domain fee.
Yes.
They're not free. And there's a site that you can go to find out who it's registered to.
That's right.
It's very easy.
What is it? Do you know?
I'll show you.
Go for it. Go for it. That's great.
I can't remember off the top of my
Because you're on the right track there.
Yeah.
It's like, who is?
Yeah, who is?
Mhm.
Their phone number, their address, you know, who it's registered to, when it started and when it expires. So somebody owns the domain name.
Okay,
It's
well,
just not out there.
yeah, well, I've been trying to tell him, I said, I don't know who it is, and I've tried to find it, I'll try some more.
But if they purchase a domain name, you're not going to be able to get rid of it. The only thing you can do is market your website and have what we call SEO, stocks, what is it, optimization on the web. So that your church comes up first when you put it in Google.
That's right.
Search engine optimization is SEO.
Very good. Yes, you do want to. Yeah, who is? There's a whois.net. I'm going to try to pull this up so you can have a look. But that's it, and you can, if it's been a while, that domain is probably going to expire, and then you can snap it up, and then you can own it, and that's what you want to try to do.
Even when it expires, it doesn't necessarily actually disappear.
No.
Because there's nobody to host it.
Yeah.
But I don't think they necessarily keep up to date on that. I don't think it necessarily automatically gets pulled off.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, no, I actually don't know the answer to that. You can try to track it down. So here's whois.net. I'm going to try to get out of PowerPoint here for just a few minutes so you can have a look. I think it's probably the same.
It's exactly the same. It's net income. I wrote the same.
Let's see. Try to change what you see here. This isn't my normal computer, so I'm kind of getting acquainted with it. I'm not sure who took that. I bet that was odd. Yeah, I did a boneheaded thing and I left my laptop on the desk. I don't know why it should be showing you now. Hey, E. Can I get a hand? I can't get it to switch. I'm trying to show on the web, get on here for now, and I can't get it to show up on the screen. You can see the mouse. So you're going to have to help me get out
There we
there.
Okay. Big changes, go like that. And actually, let's keep it on. You could.
Okay, I
you
can keep it on
all
here.
the time.
Okay.
'Cause I logged into the that one now.
So now you can see what
Now
I'm
it's
doing.
fixed.
Okay. We've got two different connections going on, two different microphones going on. And I didn't bring my own computer, so I'm
All set.
a little off kilter. Okay, so we're going to poke around on this website. Okay, so but that is a good point. You do want to keep track of who has the login information to your website and make sure that during any staffing or leadership changes, that information gets passed on to the next person. Of course, you want to make sure it's somebody trustworthy, but also sometimes we get a little too too possessive maybe of it, or maybe afraid to trust somebody else with it. But that does us a disservice, because it often is too much for one person to do, to keep up with on their own, and it also it provides some accountability and some ease in the transitional times. So do make sure that somebody else has access. Another thing, a problem we ran into at Topeka, the person who had last paid for our domain name had transitioned out, her credit cards expired, and one day we log into our website and it's gone, it's out there. We had to start fresh and buy it all over again because luckily we were able to make some moves and get into, we found old passwords, we were able to get into it, but we had a couple days where we were just out of luck. It was gone. Anybody could have bought it. Our website was down. So just try to safeguard against that. You can pay for your domain name for like 10 years in advance, and that is great to do because then you don't have to worry about it. But just don't forget to check on it every once in a while. Log in and see that the payment information is up to date. Whoever's email is in there is up to date, because there had been emails sent to this address, but no one was checking that address anymore. It was just there in case somebody else wanted to see if anyone had been sending emails to that address. So that's one of those live and learn things. So there's that whois.net. You can find out, you can look up different domains and find out if the one you want is available. So here's a little sample website I came up with. I got real creative, and I just called it GPUMC Sample Church because I didn't have any better ideas. So here at the top, I've got our slogan: follow Jesus Christ with us and transform the world. That's what we're all about in one sentence. Here is our, and I've checked that these pages work well on mobile or on desktop. So here's our welcome page. On the welcome page, and of course I used pictures that I have at the conference office, so they don't necessarily match with one particular church, and they're from different conference events rather than church events, except for some that I stole from my own church website. If you go to the Topeka website now, or their Facebook, they've dismantled everything I've done. They've gone rogue. They're doing their own thing now, and they're doing really well. But it's not an example of if you want to see what I've done before. So this picture here, it's the picture of the inside of the Baldwin First Sanctuary, and it is filled with people. It is taken from the perspective of being behind the pulpit, I think, and it's during Institute. So there are people there. They're singing. They're enjoying themselves. There's a worship team up front. Somebody has said to me before, well, our church is never that full. We can't post a picture that looks like that because our church, Baldwin First is usually not that full. This is a special thing that's happening in there where this picture is taken. So you can get real creative with your angles. When you take the picture, maybe get a little closer. You can get creative and come up with a pretty good image that doesn't just show empty space, but shows people in worship. So that's why I chose that picture. Transforming the world, beginning with our town. It's an actionable statement. We are not just here. We are here to transform the world. Here's our worship times displayed. 8 and 10 a.m. A lot of our churches might only have one, but we wanted an example that showed maybe if you have two, how you might handle that. Here's a welcome statement. Welcome to GPUMC Sample Church. We are a thriving congregation serving the community of our town, Kansas, since 1923. Join us as we connect in Christian fellowship, grow in faith, and spread the love of Jesus. So we try to use a lot of verbs. And then an invitation. We would love for it to have you gather with us for worship. Every Sunday morning, we have coffee and refreshments served in Fellowship Hall. All ages are invited. So we've included that we worship every Sunday. There is refreshments provided. All ages are welcome. There's not a lot of sentences here, but we try to pack a lot of meaning into a small amount of words. And here's our Sunday morning schedule. Again, we put it up there, and now we've put it down here, and we've got a little more specific. Here's our traditional worship. Here's our Sunday morning classes. Here's contemporary worship. Here's a statement how children are welcome in worship. We provide activity bags at the entrance to our worship space. Maybe you do or don't, but that'd be a good place to include that detail. Nursery care, is that available? You might want to mention that as well. Here's a link here. Oh, down here. This is a picture. If you wanted to put just a picture of the building, which can be helpful to make sure you're oriented to the right place, you might put it here next to your contact information. I borrowed this picture from Frankfurt UMC. That was one of the churches I grew up in who I visited recently. And they had this really nice, clear picture, so I took it. So I've got my contact information here. But you also can just do a get in touch. This is encrypted. This will go to my, it really will, it will work. If you try to send me a message through this website, it will go to me. But that way, no email address is displayed here. So there's just two different ways you can do it, submit the form that way. And when can they contact you? Do you have office hours? You might want to list them. Or if there's some certain times, if you put the pastor's phone number on there, and the pastor will answer during these certain times. Different pastors do it differently, but you might mention that somewhere. Any questions about the welcome page? Okay, so I've got a link here. Once you've scrolled down, learn more about what you can expect at GPUMC Sample Church. But I've also got that tab up here. So I've got it at the top, but if you scroll down, I'm not going to make it hard for you to find the information again. We're going to go through it here. I'm new. I've just made it as simple as possible. What do I need to know? I borrowed the format and a lot of the information on this page from Auburn, Nebraska United Methodist because they had just revamped their website and they did a really good job on their visitor page. So I wanted to really give them some kudos. They've done a really good job. And I have picked up a lot, and give them credit because I have stolen this from them. Borrowed. I believe it's Auburn. I have to find it. Auburn first. Auburn, Nebraska United Methodist. There's Auburn, Kansas too, but this is from Auburn, Nebraska. Oh, I put a link in it. AuburnNeumc.com. Their website is very, very simple, but it's clean, it's easy to navigate, it's got some good images, answers all your questions. So I think they've done a good job. So I borrowed some ideas. I did modify it a little bit though. So start very basic. We've told them a couple times already when worship meets. We're going to tell them again. We don't want people to dig around. We want to make it easy. Sunday worship is at 10 a.m. And I think on the first page, because we made this edit later, I said it was at 8 and 10 a.m. A quick description of what your worship service is like. If it's blended, explain what blended means. You might say, our service is traditional. We sing hymns accompanied by an organ, and our choir sings lovely anthems. You might say our service is contemporary. We praise God using the Christian music of today. You might find a way to spell it out very simply what that worship style is. If you've never been to worship before, you may not understand what traditional, contemporary, blended, those kinds of things means. Just very clearly mark what that is. Holy Communion is celebrated once a month, usually on the first Sunday. Communion is open to everyone. That's another one of those things. Now, and if you wanted to here, you could add a link to Holy Communion. And you could have that link to an article from the United Methodist Church that explains what communion is. If you wanted to take it a step further, I think that'd be a really good idea. Anytime we can answer questions, help people feel like they know what they're getting into, I think that helps. Gives us a chance to witness as well before they even ask us any questions. And it's open to everyone. Some churches it's not, but in ours it is. So it's important to note that. We've got a picture here of what worship looks like. That's also at Institute. And I love that picture because they're so engaged in leading worship there. And here I've got a statement about what you'll see our members wearing. But you wear what makes you feel comfortable. There's no expectation there. Do you have Sunday school classes? Yes, we do. Some churches are not calling it Sunday school anymore, but Sunday morning classes might be more descriptive. Yes, classes for all ages meets at 9 a.m. through the school year. Our discipleship coordinator can help you find the right group for you. Now, I'd link if you have somebody who volunteers or serves on staff who helps you to organize Sunday school, maybe you link to their email address there, or on the staff page, you just tell them who they can get in touch with or to look for on Sunday morning. It is helpful to have someone at your church who can point a visitor in the direction of the right Sunday school class. But let them know, when they get there, they won't just be left to flounder and find their own way. There will be someone there to help you. Parking information. Please include that. And, at our church, it's an ongoing process, but we are trying really hard to train our members to not park in the best spots, park in the farther spots or the lot across the street, because we want our visitors to come and find the easiest way to park and find their way into the building. We don't want it to be work for them. So that's part of hospitality. Tell them where they're parked and then teach your members to park somewhere else. I know, right? Because we have our favorite pews and we also have our favorite parking spots. And I know that our congregations are aging and they do need their close spots. But if people are able to park farther away, it adds to the more welcoming atmosphere. And you get more steps. It's good for everybody. We had to teach our choir because they get there before anybody else. Please don't take the closest spots. In our church parking lot, we did mark a few spaces for senior adults because there are definitely concerns there. We don't want to ignore that. So we do want to create a more welcoming environment, and we're just trying to think of every way we can make our church more welcoming from the time you even enter our parking lot. Okay, so here's the questions. We've already said children are welcome in worship, but let's talk a little bit more about that. My children are pretty young. I don't know if you really mean they're welcome in worship. Well, sure they are, absolutely. They should come. Babies, toddlers, and children are important to our church family. They're always welcome in worship. We have activities for them. If you prefer, they can go to nursery care. During the Sunday school hour, we have Sunday school for children ages 3 and up, or whatever, however your church organizes that. At our church, we have a grace space. So we do have activity bags, and we do have nursery for ages infant to, I think, age 2. So we've made several moves to be more accommodating to younger families. So we do have the activity bags. We also have taken out a couple of pews on one side of the church. Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness and just take those pews out, because this could be a conversation that goes on for a couple years before it happens. But it has been really worth it. When we were going to do this, people were afraid that the children would be noisy or restless. This would be distracting. This would harm the aesthetic of our sanctuary. There's all kinds of different worries that people had. But when we finally did it, we put in a little rug and a couple of little tables with stools and chairs just the right size, some quiet books, coloring books, Bibles in different levels, from either picture book Bible all the way up to elementary age Bible, because we really want to encourage people to use the Bible during worship. So we put all the kinds of Bibles at their level. It's a really sweet little space. In our church, we have it in the sanctuary toward the front. So when the kids, that is also the main entrance to our sanctuary. It's right by the altar and the pulpit, and you have to walk through the front doors if you want to go to the nursery or the bathroom or anything else. So it's positioned at the front. But what we noticed right away was the kids would stand up and they'd watch the choir. They watched the bells. The parents would take their hands and take them up for communion, and they'd watch the people for communion go by. They're not noisy at all. They're actually very engaged in worship. The parents don't worry as much about them wiggling or making noise. They're in their space, and they're happy. And they look forward to it. And what a big statement that makes to a family coming to visit your church. Like, they're already ready for me. I feel welcome already. So that's what we've done. Ended up being a pretty low-cost thing, just moving a couple of pews and putting a little table in there with some crayons, but it's made a big difference. But of course, we do keep the nursery open. And also for the kids who are about preschool to age 6 or 7, we do provide a worship readiness class where a volunteer takes them out just for the time during the sermon and teaches them. They might talk about the sermon theme at their level, or they might talk about what is communion, or what is something that happens during church that they may not understand yet. Gets down and talks to them at their level for about 20 minutes and brings them back in at the end of the service. So if you are offering things like that, and if you aren't, you maybe think about how can we do that. Be sure you mention that. So what goes on during the week? Well, sure, there's a lot going on. This can be a part of your life. We stay pretty busy. We're not just here Sunday mornings. We are active. We have choir, youth group, we've got Bible study, mission projects. Check out our Get Involved page for more details. I click on that later, but that's where you might direct somebody. Again, a lot of this is inspired by the Auburn website. They've done a great job. You might also want to include testimonials from people in your church who've been there for different amounts of times. I've made up these people. Henry Hill says, GPUMC Sample Church has been my church home for 35 years. This church has given my family a firm foundation of faith and given us spiritual support through difficult times. But now I've got Mary Murphy. She says, I started going to GPUMC Sample Church when I moved to town 2 years ago. My family went to the back-to-school pool party, and we were blown away by their hospitality. We kept coming back to the pool party church because of the difference it was making in our lives. I know that Leavenworth First United Methodist has a train, or at least they used to, and kids just loved going to the train church. It was just a train. It was a train they could climb on. But it was just like they visited, and that became the thing. Oh, I want to go back to the train church. So that's maybe an example of somebody who has come back because their kids got hooked into something they enjoyed. Fred Farmington, I tell you what, sometimes my creativity is just blown, and I'm not good at making up names. What I love about GPUMC Sample Church is the Wednesday night activities. So we're touching on a different part of church life here. Beginning with dinner gives us time to check with each other as a community. Studies have helped me grow in my faith. So you've got people who are here from different lengths of time, who are talking about different experiences of life within your church. And I bet you could grab 3 people and ask them to make a statement. Maybe you can prompt them a little bit, but they're not lying. They're telling about what they really do love about the church, because when you love your church, you want other people to know how great it is. So that might give a visitor an idea of what it might be like. You just want to show them, what is life like in your church? Why do I want to do this? Yeah, it's time to jump in. This looks great. There's a search function there. We've also got our Facebook embedded here. That's a widget. You can, most websites will offer you different widgets. They're just easy to plug in when you're building the page. You can have your social media feed on there. And then that might take them down another path. They can explore what you've got going on social media. I've got meet our staff. I've mentioned you can also, if you want to add a paragraph or 2 about your history, some churches find that to be important. You certainly can. Excuse me, I don't know what that is. Yes.
This has advertising on it.
Yes. This is a free website. If I were to pay the $5 a month, that would go away. Cheap. But still, for a free website, this is pretty good. If I were to pay the $5 a month to go up a step, I wouldn't have it say WordPress. You can see here it says WordPress right here in the URL. It would take that out. It would eliminate ads. It would also give me more features. I could do different kinds of media features that are really easy to plug in there that I don't have because I'm not paying the subscription. But if this were a real church, I would find it well worth it. And WordPress will help you get the URL. So here's our staff page. Yeah, and you know what she really is? This is actually a picture of Donna Ernest from the Great Plains staff. She's the AA in Congregational Excellence, and she is a saint. She really is. So, yeah, I've made her yeah. Usually she gets to be the pastor's wife. But I made her the pastor of this church because I'd follow her anywhere. Yeah, sure. Oh, okay. I'm not sure if I even told her I did that. Can we scroll up a little bit?
Oh, there we go. Perfect. I'm sending that.
It's my necklace. Oh, sure. Go for it. I took the necklace off. there are different opinions about that. Sure. I will say what I've read, it goes back and forth. Sometimes it's more trendy to scroll, and sometimes it's pictures. I'll show you a different page that I've done of something different, just real quick. See how quickly this loads. I'll go back to the staff page.
Sometimes they say like no more than 3 clicks.
Yeah, sometimes they say that, and this looks. Of course, this is looking weird, of course, because that's today. Anyway, I've got buttons here. I've just got 6 pictures here that link directly to pages, so you don't have to scroll on that page. Mm-hmm. And it just stays at the top. Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. There are different features. Like if I weren't using a free website, I'd have more features available to me like that. And whoever helps you set up your website can help you set up features like that. Mm-hmm. But another way to do that, if you're just not as savvy or comfortable, is just to add links throughout the page to take you to different things. Yeah, a lot of times the menu's fixed at the top. Sure. Are you ready back there, E? Okay, we'll just go ahead and let people straggle in. Sure. Yeah. We've had a couple of comments during break about maybe statement of beliefs and how that might be worded and where might that go. I think it's a good idea. People don't shy away from that. We've talked about, one comment, how heavy-handed do we want to be? Not very, because these are visitors. But we also want to be clear, we believe in Jesus, and you might have links to, I saw a good example from Linwood. Linwood had a very nice example of how you put links to from the United Methodist Church, what we believe, I think that's a good idea. People are looking for meaning, and we have a lot to offer to enrich their lives. We have the most important message in the world, and it matters. Church communications matter. It matters to do it well. It matters to put the effort in. Sure, don't shy away from those things. Just make sure you're not saying things in a way that are hard to understand or maybe sound judgmental to non-church members. Let's get back into it. We did talk about photography a little bit. Now, if you're getting your website started or there's certain images you want but you don't have yet, it is okay to use certain stock images. There's a few websites. If you want some suggestions, I'll give them to you. Some high-quality images to get you started. There's nothing wrong with that. And a lot of website builders will have a library of free images you can use until you get the right images. It's better to have some kind of image in there rather than an empty space that has a question mark that there's supposed to be an image there. It looks incomplete. So there are some good sources out there. And the Great Plains has a Flickr gallery. You are free to use any images from there as well.
I'm sorry, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's hard to access them. It's not like the size, and it's hard to. I don't like it.
Okay, that's fine. Most of the pictures we use at the Great Plains are from our Flickr gallery, and we work really hard to use pictures from Kansas and Nebraska. You're not going to find pictures of, except for when Todd went to the Holy Land and posted a lot of pictures. Those are some high-res images. You're not going to find pictures promoting things that have a beach or mountains. This is the Great Plains. So you might keep that in mind too. You might have a sermon series that might be appropriate for, but I've seen churches where you go to their homepage and they've got a picture of the mountains, but I know this is a small town in Kansas, so I'm confused. Maybe I'm not sure exactly where this place is. So just keep in mind, do your images make sense with your church or what you're talking about? And I will take criticism of the Flickr gallery later. It's not my project, but I have some input if I need it. Oh, well, we have an album. Yeah, those are for our news stories. But we have an album from Scenes Across the Great Plains where whenever someone submits an image of something beautiful in the Great Plains, because we really feel that the Great Plains are an underrated beauty. We love Kansas and Nebraska. We're very proud of where we're from. So we have pictures of fields fresh from harvest, and we've got clouds and sunsets and pictures that people have submitted from the camps. And if you are ever out and you see something beautiful that you capture, send it to us, and we'll put it in that gallery. You might see it come across social media. Other churches are allowed to access those pictures. You can access those pictures yourself if you want to use them. There's a couple hundred in that album. I would really love to expand that to be lots more. So send me your pictures. If you've got something beautiful to share, I love that. But yeah, a lot of the albums are for specific news stories that we've covered, which might be interesting to you as well if you want to share what's happening. Like when we were at General Conference, there was a lot to share about that, and that might be a resource for you. Looking forward to next year, know that we will be posting things there.
I do want to say something about the conference website.
Uh-huh.
It is really, for me, it's a really good place to go and grab news articles, things that are going on around the state and around the conference area. And I often use the devotions
Sure.
In the newsletter. So whoever does the devotions, pass on to there's like a group of them that do it.
Yeah.
Those devotions are wonderful. So if you haven't looked at those devotions, I tell you, some of them are just...
There's some
they
really
make you wanna
wonderful...
cry. Some of them are so...
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. The things we do on our website and social media, some things are things you can copy and some things are done differently because our purpose is different than your purpose. We are here to resource churches in our conference. So that being said, if you read our daily devotions and you want to share those with our church, that's what they're for. They're for your personal devotion time, but they're also there for you to share. And you can invite your church members. If you have somebody in your church who is good at writing devotions or is just one of those people, when they talk, they have something so insightful to say, ask them to write those things down and send them to us. Every day, we send out a devotional email. It has a scripture for the day. It usually goes with the lectionary calendar, but it doesn't have to. And then that person's reflection on that passage, and then a little prayer for reflection. Lisa Sokup upstairs, or wherever she's milling around right now, she puts those together. She compiles those. She writes a lot of them herself, and that's a lot of work, but she also is in charge of signing people up to write them. So she would just love it to get some more submissions for those. They are the voices of our conference. And yes, we've made this nice bookmark for you. Keep it in your Bible or pass it on to somebody else. This is the banner from our daily devotions that you'll see in the email. If you want to sign up to write one or to read them, you can scan this QR code or email Lisa or go to this website and you'll learn all about our daily devotions. Every day they are also, most days unless I get too busy, they are posted on social media, and I make the images on social media. If you go to our social media class, I'll show you how I make those. I try to tag if they have a Facebook page, I will tag the pastor and the church who either wrote it or who we're praying for that day, so we can all be connected. It really shows our connection as a conference. All of us together are one church family, and our daily devotions are a really beautiful way to demonstrate that. And news articles on our website. It's a good way to show what's going on. Disaster relief has been huge this year. If you want to share with your community or your church what's going on in the conference, we're doing some amazing things with flood cleanup and tornado relief, and you can find out just anything that's going on across countries. David Burke is here. He writes most of the articles, and he does a really wonderful job of filling us in. And he's also who you would contact if there's a story that you want to tell about your church. But those are all good things to share from our church, or for your church from us. Feel free to use any resources you find. They're there for you. Wake up. Okay. Okay, so we were looking at this. We've looked at some ahead a little bit. So I've got my get involved menu here. I've got the landing page, but really it's most important that you have information for your different areas. Here's my special events page. It tells you to subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on Facebook. It's just a general information. This is the kind of events that you might be looking for. And join us for our next event. Obviously, I built this site in August, so that was when our church was having a back-to-school pool party. But if I had something else going on in our real church, I'd put that there. I'd take it down. Even if you don't have something else coming up, say, hey, just watch for the next thing. You don't have to have old information up there just to have something fill the space. And then a calendar. If I were a real church, I'd have this be a clickable calendar with our different events going on. And down here, I've got a gallery. This was the one event, but you could put a gallery of your most recent church event for people to click through. You can click on that and make it bigger. So we had really great event that day. So, yeah, Google Calendar is a pretty easy one, easy to plug in. Whatever website you use might have a suggestion of what works best with that particular platform. This is just a overview of what it would be like to go deeper at our church. A life of following Jesus means never standing still, but learning to listen to God's call and following where God leads. So here's just some ways you can be intentional about going deeper at church. You might have a different way of doing that, but this might just give you some ideas. Go on a mission trip, create a habit of daily Bible reading. For prayer resources, go to the Great Plains Conference website. We have prayer practices listed here. And we've got a little bit of a slow connection, but these are all buttons that take you to a different prayer practice. So if you're looking for new ways to pray or scriptures, you can always come visit this page. So that's why I linked it as a resource on this sample website of something that might be useful. Ideally, though, you would have that open up in a new tab. And just a quick look at a giving page. I've got an image there that's not loading, but here's where I would have a link. It's not live, but to give online, pay for church activities, a quick paragraph. This is our gift to you if you're a guest, but if you are, this is your opportunity to support the mission and ministry of the church through giving. We might just look at the children's page real quick just for an example. And this might be a lot of words. I mean, honestly, some churches don't have a lot of words at all on a page for their ministry. Maybe you don't need them. Include enough details so people have what they need, but if it's too much, they might miss out on some things. Another trend I see that drives me crazy is a lot of blocks of text will be centered, and there's certainly a time where that can work really well and look really cool, but if you're getting into paragraphs here, it's a lot cleaner and easier to read, and we want this to be easy for people to read, but it's more important to be clear than cool, although it's more fun to be cool. But I've got it left justified because it's just a little cleaner and easier to follow if you just want to read through it real quick. So we've got just a quick little picture gallery here. I don't want to spend too much time on it. Let's go back to our presentation. Okay. So we'll just go through a few tips, and then we'll have some time to talk and maybe think through some things. We've talked about short testimonials from members. Review every page regularly. Set up a schedule. I'm going to look at these pages on the first Monday of the month. But always keep that special events page in mind or anything that's timely. But also do yourself a favor and not make everything timely. Keep graphics and design simple. You don't need a lot of fonts. You don't need a lot of colors. Actually, don't use lots of colors of fonts. Keep it very, very simple. The default font on your website is usually fine. You can have something in your logo, and then whatever is nice and easy to read for the paragraphs or any information is good. This one on the slides.
Or was on your website.
On the website, I think it was just Calibri. It was the default one for the website because it's the default because it's nice and easy to read. Now, if I'm designing something, I don't go with the default because I want to do something that makes a little more impact. But I really want something that's clean and easy to read on my website.
So for the main, like, text and stuff all the same, but then, like, you're saying.
Yeah, you could use.
Like
You,
an event.
yeah, sure. If you had an event logo or a graphic, you could have some fun with that. But sometimes I see they're just trying to have fun and catch your attention, but it ends up being orange and blue and purple text, and that's too much, you know. Or something that's hard to read, a font that's hard to read. Keep it clean because the most important thing is the information. Just make your life easy. Don't have more pages than you can keep up with. Start small. If you need to add pages as you go and you can keep up with them, you can do that. But make it easy for yourself, for you and whoever's helping you to keep up with. Make it simple. Plan a content calendar. At our church, there is a planning retreat once a year, and where they get together and look at the entire year coming up and making no assumptions that anything that's ever happened before will ever happen again. So that's why we try not to do things anymore just because we've always done them. And if there's a reason to do it again, we do it. But then sometimes, you don't have to keep doing a bad idea over and over. And sometimes we get into bad habits. So anyway, it's a fresh look at the calendar. And that might be where you take a year. You might sit down with some leadership in your church, look at the whole year and say, well, we know we need to do something for Lent, Easter, summer, back to school time, Advent, Christmas Eve. So those are the big things. And then here's when we're going to do VBS. So you've got your wide calendar. And then every month you want to go in and look at, so what are we going to do this month? What's coming up the next month that we need to talk about this month? And then go in weekly and just make sure, just look at your calendars. Make sure you're keeping up with it. Is there something that we need to mention one more time? We can get into a habit of reacting to, oh my gosh, no one knows about this and it's happening tomorrow. You don't want to get into that position. Just plan ahead. I am visual. Some people really like to make an Excel spreadsheet. That makes my head hurt. I have to have a real printed calendar that I write on. Sometimes I color code it, but it helps me to see these are my deadlines. This is when something needs to be published. If I'm making ads for the church, I know that the newspaper needs my Christmas Eve ad November 28th, or October 28th is when it was. So I would make October 15th the deadline for anything that was going to be on the website or any publications through any part of Advent. So that means everybody else in the church had to plan ahead too. But the trick is plan ahead. I can't emphasize that enough. You'll save yourself so many headaches. It also saves you from having to go, we have an urgent need. We need volunteers. You have to do this or it will fail. No one responds to that well. It gives you the opportunity to say, hey, we've got a great thing coming up. It'd be fun for you to serve with us. This will be good for you, be good for your family. Hey, come to this event. It's giving you plenty of time to put it on your calendar because we know you're busy. You never want to look desperate or demanding, and that all just comes from planning ahead. And just check back with it every once in a while. The best thing I did at the church, if you've been in church staff or communicating very long, maybe you have people hand you announcements on a napkin. Maybe you hear it through like third or fourth hand. Maybe someone has sent you an email, like maybe in the middle of the night, or maybe they sent it a few months ago before, and you didn't. Maybe there's just there's a lot of information coming at you from different sources, and it's really hard to hold on to all of that. So what I did was I said, enough. I'm going to be mean now. Other churches have found this was very helpful as well. I created a communications request form. It was one go-to place where all church announcements were submitted. And this way, if they were sent to, and there's an example of it printed out, if you picked one up with the handouts, I've printed out the one they have on their website now. It's almost exactly, out of all the things they've gotten rid of, they've kept this because it's so helpful. If anything needs to go on the church calendar, or in a bulletin, or in a newsletter, or our church doesn't do this, but some churches, if you make announcements, if a pastor makes an announcement verbally in front of the congregation on Sunday morning, those are all boxes that can be checked, and that way you can't say, well, why didn't you put my announcement in the bulletin? And well, you didn't check the box. And if you would like us to do that next time, check the box. It takes reinforcement because it's breaking some habits. But it gives. But once we trained people to use it, they started to see the benefit of the process because it really made a big difference. Make sure people know the deadline for submissions, and our church made a real push to put everything online. But this was so important. Church communications is so important to do it right that I made a printed copy available to anyone who didn't want to submit it online. I wasn't going to be that mean about it because there's a lot of people in our church who weren't comfortable with that, but they did want us to publicize their UMW event or whatever it was, and it's be fair. Be fair. So on this form, you can there's a URL to go visit it. This is this is all the information that you need to know if you're going to submit an announcement at our church. It would on the website. It would be up here. The reasoning, there's a lot of information here, but it became clear that our church members didn't have the same understanding of how our church publications worked as we on the staff did. And it wasn't necessarily clear on the staff what we were doing either. So, but as the communicator, I was just kind of internally filtering the way things needed to, because in my mind, I knew what I was doing, and then it became clear that other people didn't understand my process here. So we made it clear that the deadline to submit an announcement is Tuesday at noon, and that was pretty generous because we do a weekly newsletter on Wednesday that goes out at noon. So it was pretty, right? But I knew I had, those were my days. I would set aside Monday and Tuesday morning to work really hard and get those things out there. And then once people got used to the deadline, it got really easy to do because I knew when to expect information and they knew when they should get it to me. And then I didn't have anything at the last minute going, oh, can you just slip this in real quick? Because they knew when the deadline was. And then, our website handled it best if you just emailed me a picture. So you make that clear. If they want a picture, how do they get it to you? We ask them to bear in mind, many people who read our announcements are new to our church or they're visitors looking to connect with us. Don't assume people know the context of your announcement. If they don't know that this is an annual thing that's happening, they don't know if it's got a weird acronym, what is that? They don't know if this is referring to something else that happened previously or if this is building from another announcement. An example of that, actually, because we don't do it perfectly, but we've gotten a lot better about it. We have a before-school program at a nearby elementary school. When our school district changed to having late arrival days on Fridays to give the teachers their time to collaborate, it left parents without childcare before school on the Fridays. So our church, it was Wednesdays at the time, which is why we have the acronym WAFL, Wednesday activities, but now we've changed it to weekday activities because they changed the day for learning enrichment, something like that. It's an acronym, so you always have to spell it out for people who may not know. So our person who directs that, she does such a wonderful job. It takes a lot of volunteers because there are a lot of kids who need that program. So she gets up this year and she says, Waffle's coming up. Again, we need volunteers. This is really important to the life of our community, and a lot of people in our church really enjoy serving in that way and have found it meaningful. So please, we really need volunteers. We don't have enough this year. All right, see you later. And that's all she said. But we've been actually blessed over the past year since we've last enrolled volunteers at Waffle to have several new families and members come into our church who didn't know what it was. And so they did have to get up the next week and say, hey, have you heard about the Waffle program? Every Friday we go to State Street Elementary School. We have children for 1 hour. You will be assigned to a Waffle leader. And we do crafts and activities. We pray with the kids, and then we send them on the way to a 1 hour commitment. And it goes on. And if you want to know the exact dates, here's the brochure. And it went over so much better. If people know exactly what they're signing up for, they'll be much more likely to sign up for it. So be clear. Don't assume people know what the waffle program is or what anything else is. Be clear. I know. And it sounds, I want waffles, right? It makes you hungry. So you want to be sure that you're being clear. Don't make any assumptions. Your own members might have forgotten what it is. So we divided up the purpose of our announcements to the bulletin is more focused on what visitors need to know or if you need to sign up for something. So we might have, they changed it to a link or a QR code, but on the front of the bulletin it would say a few welcoming things or things about kids or where to find refreshments, that kind of thing. The back had a statement of beliefs, but it is a flexible document, so sometimes those things change, but it's always oriented to where helping visitors find what they need to know on Sunday mornings. And then the inside has any kind of activity coming up, and we have a tear-off card so you can, instead of using the folders when you sign in for worship, it's a connection card that tears off the bulletin. I've seen some churches just insert it into the bulletin. There are different ways you can do it. And then people put the connection card. It has wording about you're offering your presence in worship as you're offering this morning. And you can also put, of course, your tithes and offerings in the basket. But this gives us the information and also gives someone to put something in the basket. It also gives them a chance to sign up for things, or they check a box to learn about membership or baptism, what it means to, So it's a very useful tool oriented to visitors and sign-ups. Now, the newsletter, you're probably not signed up for the newsletter unless you have been connected to our church at least a little while. So that's where we're going to spell out more information about what the leadership committee is doing, or church council, or more specific to insider church things. We also ask people to stop referring to us as FUMC. And we had to remind people about that for a long time, but they remember now. When we changed our slogan to "For the Good of the City," we also changed our name to Topeka First United Methodist. And it wasn't really a name change so much as defining our name, because we were referring to ourselves in so many different ways, you wouldn't know in a conversation what church you're talking about. When we were looking at URLs for our website, we couldn't do Topeka First. There was another church called Topeka First. We could, there are all kinds of other churches going by first and using different acronyms. No one knew what FUMC stood for. And so when we were sending out advertisements or inviting people to events, they didn't know necessarily what FUMC was. So we are Topeka First because we are focused on our community. Of course, we have a broader focus internationally, but we are focusing on our Topeka First United Methodist. Topeka First United Methodist. You could use the term Topeka First UMC if you want to be shorter, but never FUMC, because in our community it just didn't make sense. It might make sense for you. It just was clear no one in our community knew us by that. They didn't know what we were talking about. So if you need to be specific about that for your church, make sure you think it through and say so.
I have a question on the communication request form. Back to your sample
Sure.
church. Where would you put this on the website?
I would put it on Get Involved. I think I put it under the tab for Get Involved. I'm trying to visualize exactly where it goes, but there's probably like a communications tab or a newsletter tab, and let your church members know that it's there. And then it's very simple. Name, how would we contact you, a title for if you want to include a title, or if you want to leave it up to us, we'll do it. Information to be shared. And the other thing was, sometimes if it was an ongoing announcement, we'd run it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and people wouldn't even notice it because they were just seeing it. They become desensitized to information. So let's put an endpoint on here. So deadlines are really important. When do you want us to start running this announcement? When do you want us to end? And that also tells them, I need to think about when I want this to start and end. So it helped to steer some of the planning in our church, because we were thinking through details we just hadn't took very seriously before. Mm-hmm.
How did you guys determine, like, we have problems with that because we have 10 people that want to do announcements, and we have to decide.
Sure.
We can't have 10 announcements, or it would be
Sure.
everybody. So how is it the staff and administration that kind of just choose it, or does it all work out, or?
That's a good question. It does seem to balance out pretty well, especially when the newsletter could be a little bit longer. So the things on Sunday mornings, when we defined that this was going to be visitor information and sign-up information, that limited it a lot. Because then you don't have to have the summary from the last meeting up there, or just different things that people might want to communicate, but that might not be the most pressing thing to take up space.
So visitor and signups is in the bulletin, but is that also your parameters for your verbal announcement?
Well, those are at the pastor's discretion.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can say we just started, because we have the big monitor upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
I do a running slideshow with the
Mhm.
announcements for the first half hour before
Yeah.
service starts.
And I would say anything that has a sign up, I would put goes in the bulletin. I would also put anything that is going to be in the bulletin on the screen, so they all tie together. Any other questions about the communications request? I can't tell you what a difference it made. Made my job easier, and then it made a lot of things easier. It made all of our communications easier. Okay, so then you want to check, is my website actually working? Is all this effort I'm putting into it actually getting the results I want? So one thing you can do is analytics. You can go to Google Analytics or analytics.google.com. There's a place you can take a quick little course on how to use Google Analytics. It's helpful, but you can also just get around. Honestly, I could spend a whole day just poking around and looking at numbers. It's just kind of cool. It shows you where people are coming from, what pages they're looking at, how much time they're spending on your website. And you can create a Google Analytics account, and I just typed the link in there for you if you wanted to look it up. So we're going to just a little bit more about analytics. I'm not a real expert in analytics. I do use analytics quite a bit. It is very telling. But just a few things you'll want to look at. Your audience overview, how many times someone is engaging with your website. If the bounce rate shows you if they're leaving your website, they're like, oops, that's not what I wanted, and they're leaving. Or maybe they found exactly what they're looking at. So there's different ways of considering your bounce rate, but they might come exactly to the page they were looking for. And since you can look and see what top pages people are looking at, if you think, oh, well, that's the only page they visited, but that's fine because that's what I wanted them to see, that might be fine. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, there's page views, and then there's users. I'm trying to think of returning use. Yeah, and you can compare those numbers. Uh-huh.
I was going to say, I didn't know that that's what it was. I also have a Facebook page.
Yes.
And that comes up on mine
Yes.
all the time.
Uh-huh.
How many people have hit
Yes.
this time and what page?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
You
where
can-
it's coming from, but I
Sure.
see it all the time.
And we'll talk about that if you're going to the social media class later. But Facebook is much more in your face about it. But you can look at it for your website as well. And it's very insightful. And I think it's really cool. Segments, you can create different audience segments if you want to make a segment that says new visitors and compare it to returning visitors. I mean, you can just look at that behavior. Behavior flow is the coolest one, I think, because it'll give you a cool chart. I am a visual thinker, so it shows me arrows flowing from one thing to another. Where are people starting, and what do they do next? What's the third thing they do? Where do they leave your site? So if you're wanting people to take certain steps when they visit your website, are they scrolling to the bottom and clicking the I'm new link? Then you can find out, is that the next page they go to? Is it working? If it's not working and I want them to click that I'm new link at the bottom of that first page, maybe I need to make that more obvious or make it a button. It can help you change some things to be more effective. And traffic source dimensions. This is also very cool. It'll show you if people are going directly to your URL. Are they Googling you? Are they using a Bing search? Are they coming to you through Facebook? Are they coming to you through some search engine you've never heard of? That's happens, and that's interesting. For me, I often want to know what social media platforms they're getting to us from to know if those are being effective at all. It'll also tell you if they're coming through your emails. Are your emails effective? Are they clicking through? And then it might also surprise you what other ways they're getting to your website. Like maybe there was a news article posted, and maybe they linked to you, and it was something that your church was mentioned in, and maybe there was a link to your church, and that's how they got to you. Are there any more comments before we start do a little practice? Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, we started asking congregation members to leave Google reviews.
Oh, that's a
Because
good
then we
idea.
come out the top of the search, well, not all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah, Google reviews. They were asking members to leave Google reviews. So you have a Google profile. Your church can have a Google profile. Actually, that's kind of where you also do your analytics would be under the same password, photo albums and things. So you can ask your members to leave reviews of your church. The flip side of that is then we've also had people who've never visited our church write reviews. And they'll even say, I've never been to this church, but I'm not going to go. Because people get points, like Google points, badges and things, for leaving reviews. So that's unfortunately the flip side of it. But enough good reviews balances that out pretty easily. And if you get a bad review of your church, any review, good review, bad review, respond to it. You can thank them for a good review. You can say, hey, sorry you've had a bad experience with us. Please let us know how we can make that better for you. Or you can say, hey, if you've really never been, we'd love to show you what we have to offer you and your family. Here's how you can come on Sunday morning. Responding to reviews will create a good impression with your audience, whether they're good reviews or bad reviews. Show people you're a real person there, and you're paying attention, and you're involved. So let's see. I don't know if we passed them out or if we got them. Yes. Uh-huh. Oh, is the request form tied to social media or anything else? The things that they are tied to are listed on here. Pastors' announcements aren't listed on here because that's up to the pastor's discretion. Social media was left up to the communicator's discretion. Most things would be eventually communicated on social media, but not everything has to be. So I think the church communicator can reserve the right to decide which things go on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, and what don't.
And I guess my question probably boils down to there's not like another,
This is it. There's not another place to go and ask for other things. This is it. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to be unfair. They'll contact you with any questions or if they want to do more with it. Okay. Got a little exercise that might help you think through your website. Now, I know a lot of you already have one, but this might just help you to visualize. I've got envelopes here for everybody. I'm going to hand you an envelope. Has anyone ever seen the IT Crowd, the show? There's this really hilarious show that used to be on the BBC. And they're about people who worked in a corporate IT world. And there's one, sorry, I'm just going to throw these at people, where they give someone a box and they says, this is the internet. So I'm going to give you this envelope. They're like, this is the internet. This is your website, which is where that was going. This is your website. This will be a visual representation of your website, a draft, just to help you think it through and give you something to take back home and look at it, switch it around. I think it helps with something as visual as the internet to have something visual to play with. So all of this is an envelope with index cards in it. And I believe you all have a pen. So I want you to take five of the note cards will be your menu. And so you're going to write down, and I can go back to the menu slide here. Okay, menu. So 5 of them, I want you to write down the menu tabs. Welcome on one, I'm new, get involved, go deeper, give. If you have other menu tabs you want to use, put those on there. So then I want you to write what information needs to go on that page, and maybe a brief description of an image that you might need to display on that page to demonstrate it. And then each of the other cards is a sub-tab. So you've got your main menu here, and then make a card for each of your tabs that comes down. You may not have time for all of it. You know, you might just see how far you get. The point is to, because it can be so confusing to know where everything should go, plan it out. Give yourself a little space to write the tab, a quick description of what information, and then when you go back home, you can lay it out in front of you and say, what have I done? What do I need to update? And if you want to offer comments or help for other people, please feel free to do that. Any questions, please ask. One of the handouts, if you've gotten it, I can hand. This is just a checklist I found online. I thought it was really helpful. Another great way to plan the kind of material you need. But it's one thing to have a list and another thing to actually plan what this would look like for you. So just describe what this is going to look like for you on your cards. Yeah, I think it would be. Churches do handle that differently. It's because sometimes they're a separate business that just rents the building. But if it is a ministry of your church, people will go to your church website to find that. So I would put that there. Mm-hmm. Sure, go ahead.
I was kind of interested in just knowing, can I ask everybody if their opinion on calendars? That was one of the things I was trying
Sure.
to figure out. I would appreciate information about what I didn't like about this, or what, especially what we did, this one was fairly easy to use, or this one we didn't like because it's not so easy to choose.
Sure.
It's always helpful.
No, I think this would be a good opportunity to crowdsource some of those questions. We'll let people work for a few minutes and then we can open up to conversation. How's it going? You feeling okay? Any questions over here? Okay. While we're working, are there any questions you'd like to open up to the group? I know that maybe there's a couple of questions out there that could be crowdsourced. Does anyone have anything they'd like to discuss as a group? Yes. Okay. Okay. So does anyone have experience with calendars that they've liked or not liked, or features that they look for?
One, I like Google Calendars just because you can give multiple passwords or multiple users the password to it.
They've got a new authentication going on, and they're going to send that to the phone number, and if you don't have the church's phone number on your device, you're not going to get in Google. So, just so you know, that's good to you.
Our church uses Toxify.
Toxify?
Toxify, and you can get it free, or you can get a small charge. And if you get it with small charge, I think we get it for $8 a month, and there's a charge if you want to go by the whole year. And it opens it up free with extra things that you can do to it. And you can make whole monthly calendar, you can make it a weekly calendar. If it's something that happens weekly, you can put it on there weekly, and it will repeat itself until you shut it down.
Okay.
And you can use images with it, and several things.
That's Toxify. Okay. Tock. Like TikTok. Toxify. Right. It does sound toxic. Good to know.
We use Google, but all of our emails are Google, and so the reason we like it is because if I schedule myself, I just schedule all the church events on there, and then I pop onto the website calendar, and I can put descriptions on there and everything. And it's linked to email, so everybody's, stuff
Yeah.
can go around because, it's Google Searches.
Yeah. I think that's a good tool.
And it does repeat. On Google, there's been quite a few news articles lately that Google's been hacked, and on those Google's emails, people are getting emails from strange people.
Okay.
Protect everything.
Yeah. That's hard to safeguard against. At Topeka, we use it's ACS. which is why I don't have a lot of input into this, because it's a part of our database. Is this big database that we subscribe to, and that they also do our calendar. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend it.
So we used to do something like that, where we had a separate thing that was linked to our database. And so basically, I was entering everything twice, because we actually used Google as between staff as our calendar. And so, but then on our website, we were using this other calendar, and it was just, it was a nightmare.
Oh yeah, definitely just use one.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
So
ACS
happy
does
with it.
both. It would show up. There would just be parameters where those things would post. So
Right.
it covered that, but it was also kind of clunky and not the easiest thing to use. How is your website draft coming? Is this helpful? Okay. If you want, while you're working, I can show you some sources I use. Yes. I know. You can do everything right, and people will miss it anyway.
You said something about slides, and it's kind of a joke at our, I mean, even me, I go in there, and part of it might be because I know what's on them, so I don't look at them, but I'm like, oh, I didn't even look at the slides today.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Here it is, been there for a couple weeks. Actually, that's what you say. Indirectly, so I got to tell you, I have my, so I'm the assistant office person and administrator is up here together. So she does a lot of that, and I kind of put everything together. So, but I'm also youth coordinator, so I'm getting into the, kind of into the social media with the youth stuff, which Melissa's actually come into your social media stuff. So I'm like, do you have any handouts for that?
Yes, I do. I'm happy to share. Yeah.
I'm doing youth right now. It's Instagram, it's on Facebook, with the Facebook is for graphic.
Yes. And the social media will talk mostly about Facebook, but I know all about the other stuff. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm more of a social media person.
You've got your contact information.
Yeah, it's on the last slide, and there's my card is in the folder.
Okay.
And I definitely don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, that one kind of is
Sometimes it just helps to have someone else look at it and you just talk it through. Okay. We've got a really slow connection right now. Yeah, they are, I'm sure. It's a lot of people at once. You know?
I like having him as my volunteer.
I know he tries not to overstep because it's in his headspace all the time. But he says you do a good job. Okay. A few people are still drafting, but I thought I'd show you some resources I use as I create my website. Sometimes the most helpful thing is just to know where to get a photo you have permission to use. You can't really just Google image search and use anything you find. You can get in trouble for that. But there are sites that allow you to, exist for the purpose of you using these pictures. Attribution is always appreciated. They don't always require you to say where you got the picture, but it's usually a good idea just to go ahead and say this picture came from this source. It's the right thing to do. So here's a website called prochurchmedia.com. This is a cool website. I haven't played with it a whole lot yet, but it does have it has tutorials for how to do use different kinds of software or different kinds of checklists and guides for your church communications or media. It's got this. What I have trouble with is a lot of the things I'm looking for pictures for are abstract ideas, hope. Pretty much anything can be represented by a sunset, I have found, or, or you want a picture of people volunteering, and I don't know. Anyway, there's some pretty abstract ideas we try to represent, or some specific things that when you're looking for an image, okay, yeah, but that's a business, that's not a church. It's very clear this is not a church environment or a church picture. So what this website has done is filtered through, they have worked with a website called Unsplash to compile different collections of pictures you have permission to use for free. Like I said, if when you click on a picture to download it, it says, hey, it would be nice if you just give credit to the artist, and it'll give you a link you can copy and paste onto whatever you're using. Oh, mic check.
No. We closed the software, I think.
Okay. Anyway, this Pro Church Tools website has filtered it down into small group, church life, giving. There's different categories where they've already done the work of sorting through some things for you, which is really nice. Or church symbolism. It can be really hard to find just the idea a picture is representing if you're just the idea you're looking for, but it's not a concrete thing. So that helps. We'll try to get back up here. So Christmas, Easter, like I said, it always helps to plan ahead, and if you've got your images ready to go, that gives you an edge. So youth ministry, church events. Some of it's pretty modern, maybe doesn't quite look like what goes on in our churches, and you don't want to be misrepresentative, but most of it's pretty good. There's a whole bunch of pictures about coffee. From the Great Plains Flickr Gallery, this is what you'll find if you go to flickr.com/GreatPlainsUMC. You'll see our photo stream, but you want to go to our albums. You're free to use any of our pictures. You can get creative with some of the pictures from our events, but out of context, they may not make sense. But I've opened up a couple albums that you might find useful. Holy Land. The bishop and a bunch of our clergy and Todd went to the Holy Land this year, and Todd took some really great pictures. If you're doing something for Lent where you want to talk about the different sites you read about during the story of Jesus' life and death and resurrection, he's got some real photos of the sites. It's really cool. And there's some really beautiful images. They're very high resolution, pretty big files. It's like just really beautiful holy sites, but there's also pictures of the Sea of Galilee, the fishing boats on the Sea of Galilee. It's got pictures of different ruins, all the different churches that have been built over holy sites. It's cool just to look. And the names, and he's labeled them so that you can, like here's Bethsaida, there's Megiddo, there's pictures of Capernaum, different pictures. Yeah, this boat actually existed in Jesus' time. They've excavated this boat. Isn't that incredible? So you might find some really good images to use for different things there, and you are free to use them as much as you want. Download it how many times you want. If you want to give Todd a shout out, you certainly can, but we don't require that. There's some really beautiful things. That's a This is Flickr.com, and we're just Great Plains UMC. Flickr / Great Plains UMC. The other album that we are trying to keep adding to are scenes from the Great Plains Conference. You'll see me remix these a lot for our social media posts. I try to mostly, like I said, post pictures from the Great Plains, and mostly ones that we've taken ourselves. But we do love to get pictures submitted from other people.
I was going to say, so where do you submit?
Just send me an email. Mm-hmm. Or if you have a link to a gallery somewhere I can get them from. What? Yeah, definitely. If you want to send me a link or some pictures, I would love to have those. Oh, yeah. And if you don't mind if other people use them, I mean, please include that. So this is kind of nice. Here's a helicopter view of Nebraska, or Lincoln here. One of our DSs got to do that. But we just like to show, like, it's just some really beautiful pictures of farms. So that might be a good one for patriotic. Yeah, and I don't know if you have to log in to see these. I think you can just go to the website and see them. So those are some free pictures. You will never get in trouble for using our pictures. That's what they are there for. But you do want to be sure you are getting them from a site that exists for you to use the pictures. Unfortunately, there are copyright trolls out there. You know, a troll is someone who goes on the internet and their sole purpose is to stir up trouble. So there are people who will buy a picture and then they will look for people who are using it and then sue them. You don't want to be caught doing that. You don't want to accidentally fall into something that, I mean, just it's dumb, but it's just where we are. And plus, sometimes we use something, and the artist deserves credit for it, or that's how they make their living. And so it's not unreasonable for people to have restrictions on the use of their work. So anyway, those are all free pictures you can use. Pexels is a site that we use quite a bit. Pexels, P-E-X-E-L-S. It's a free stock photos. It'll give you a link to give proper attribution if you choose to. It's a really nice thing to do. You can search for any kind of image, like if I wanted to find, I don't know, waves. I mean, it just pulls up so many possibilities here. And they're high quality. They work for any kind of publication. So that'll get you started. If you ever want more suggestions, you shoot me an email, or I can probably come up with some more resources for you. I have got more listed on the social media website, or the social media checklist workshop. Yeah, I add text to it. I'll show you a tool I use a lot. There's a couple of tools that are free and easy to use. Canva is the one most people have heard about if they're doing this. I'll go back to it. What is it? Spark. Okay. Canva is a free online software. You create an account. They make their money off of in-app purchases. So you can download these apps to your phone. You can create it on your phone or your tablet, or you can create it online. And you can make Canva's really good for printed publications. They will even print them for you, or you can download a PDF and print them yourself. And you can also make images that you will just use online, and that gives you lots of different kinds of text. If you're doing social media, the dimensions of the pictures seem to change every year. They've already got like the dimensions correct, so you don't have to guess on that. They've got a lot of free images you can use, but if you find the perfect image and it's not free, it's usually just about $1. So it's either free or inexpensive, or you can upgrade and pay a yearly fee and get lots of features. But most of what you need will be within the free or really cheap range there. And you can upload your own images, absolutely. So if you find a picture, you have your own picture, or you download from the Great Plains or another site, you can upload those here. Use whatever you want. So, it's got all kinds of, like if I don't know, if I said Facebook cover, well, I have to log in, and this is not my computer, so maybe I won't. But anyway, it'll bring it up, the box the right size. Oh, yeah. Yeah, in Canva, it is hard to, it just kind of creates a whole new file, and it gets, you can, yeah, that's like an upgrade feature. But I bring it up because it is a good tool for a lot of things. And especially if you want all your print and social media to look alike, you can, all in one spot. It's really easy. It's easy. Of course, anything you make with other software, you can paste it into different things. So this is the one I use the most. I'll go ahead and log into this. Adobe Spark. And it does not do print. There have a beta testing for downloading PDFs, but I haven't found it works very well quite yet. I think it's best just for online. But it gives you more text effects you can use. Like in Canva, you can't add a shadow to your text. You can do it by duplicating your text and then layering it, but it's a lot more simple on Spark. Yes, it is very intuitive. But the advantage of Spark is that you can resize your image if you decide it's the wrong size. So that's another tool I use. Anyway, we're going to get into that more at social media. Does anyone want to share their website draft, or some ideas they've come up with as they've been writing it out? Or insights or aha moments? Okay.
I had an aha moment on Go Deeper.
Okay.
I'm on a church council, and I get to listen to council, trustees, and finance, and all that. And I think that would be nice to have a little excerpt in that section to let the church know what they're working on.
Yeah.
Usually that group hears it.
That's a good idea. Yeah, absolutely. Those are things worth sharing. That's good. Anyone else have an aha moment that they've come up with, or another comment to share? I hope this has been helpful. I know we're all at different levels here, but I hope that everyone's coming away with something that will be useful when they get back.
I think just looking at it from a different perspective, the tablet or phone versus what it looks like on the computer is really helpful. Was helpful to us, I think, because on the phone, all of those tabs, we've got a lot of tabs.
Yes.
So we could consolidate some of those tabs.
Right.
It's a little easier to navigate on a phone.
Even
though it's really nice and easy on the computer,
Sure.
it's not necessarily the case on the phone. So I think that's my aha.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, that's important. The optimization for your device, for different devices. That is important. Any other comments or questions? Okay. We can make a graphic real quick if you want. I'm going to do this in social media. I also do some freelancing for the denomination, so I just started making them some graphics. We can go into, I don't know, we'll pick out one of the graphics I made recently and we can walk through how I did it.
Now, if you don't own the Spark account, we're going to leave a watermark.
Yes. Now, Spark is free. On your phone, it will you actually have to get 3 different apps to do the same things, because on your phone there is a Spark Post app, a video app, and I want to say Pages is on there too as its own app. You can design a cool web page on here too. But if you don't pay for an account, it will leave a watermark on there. And if that bothers you, but then you might want to pay for the account. Otherwise, it's not that big of a deal if you leave it. It really isn't.
Is it included in the Adobe Creative Cloud license?
In the what? Sorry.
Is
The
it
Creative Cloud license?
text to, I think that it's Adobe Creative Cloud that gets
Yes.
design and a bunch of other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is part of Creative Cloud. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you have Creative Cloud, you have access to this too. But if you don't, you can create an account separate from that. So I'll just get into this one. We've been so excited because we have Music Mondays now for our devotions, where one of our pastors who writes music has shared his songs with us, so that we are just starting a Music Monday. And if you have worship leaders in your church who are writing their own original stuff, we don't want to get into copyright territory with things that we don't own, but since he wrote them, he's giving us the right to use them. You can go to our daily devotions and follow the links and listen to his songs. So we are putting out images every Monday that go along with the song. So for this one, this here, that's an icon. So I'm just going to move it aside because it's in the way, but this picture here, I looked for the word joy. The song was really joyful. I looked for the word joy. Sometimes it's one of those abstract words that's hard to find pictures of joy. I was lucky enough. If you type in hallelujah, you're not going to get much back. Things I think through are, I try, unless it's people from our own conference who I know, they know that their picture is out there somewhere with us. I try not to use faces a whole lot. I mean, you do want to show faces sometimes, but sometimes out of context, if they don't know what you're using it for, it can be weird. But anyway, so for this particular series, sometimes I would use faces, but for this one, I didn't want to use a lot of faces. So I wanted a picture of joy. I didn't want to be real specific with what kind of person it was, so you can kind of imagine yourself feeling joy. If you want to doctor up the picture, you can go into filters. I can change different filters. You can make it black and white. But I like it the way it was. You can change the fonts. There's a ton of fonts here. With a faster connection, they don't show up as a bunch of fonts here. You can change the color. You just put up a text box. It's super easy. And then you can go over here and add icons, and you can have your logo. You can upload your logo and put it on there. There's a free version, and then there's this one. The one we're using is connected to our Adobe Creative Cloud account. Anyway, kind of lagging behind. So you can make some stuff that looks really cool. And it's pretty easy. I obsess over it, and it takes me forever, but that's just me. Yeah. It's never going to be perfect, except to tell myself that. Right? All right, well, we can take a break. We've got about 10 minutes before lunch. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've found something useful. Yeah, I hope. And feel free to contact me if you want me to talk through something or have another set of eyes, or you want some suggestions. Call me up.
What did I get on there? It's not even